And you know what? Everyone who thinks they know Ari from wherever they do, and even Yehoshua, okay, because Yehoshua is a big part of this as well for the truck. Anyone who thinks they know Ari or Yehoshua, I think everyone's going to come out of this program saying, wow, I didn't know that. Or wow, I'm more enriched in my life by knowing also this part of Ari and or Yehoshua.
Speaking of Yehoshua, we're going to move on. So we're going to start with a segment, and I think it's very important that through this process, I had the schut, the merit of connecting with Herb. Herb, I know you're watching, and really it means so much to me that you reached out and that we're talking and that we connected. And I want to let you know that your son is important even to me. I learned about your son, I got to meet him, and I want everybody else to meet him now. So we're going to go ahead and start. First, we are going to start with a dedication video that was made for Yehoshua in 1993 at the time of his death.
A verse in the book of Proverbs reads, Matzreif la kesef, v'chur la zahav, v'ish lefi mahalalo. The refining pot is for silver, and the furnace for gold, and a man according to his praise. The Gaon Vilna explains the verse this way. If we wish to test the essence of a person, we should ask, what do others say of him?
We think of the optimism of Yehoshua, his Ayin Tova, the message, Ya Yoshiacha Me'atzat HaMeraglim. Jason preferred to use the name Yehoshua. When he was here on the one-year program in the Beit Midrash, we knew him as Jason. And then when he came back afterwards and spent a year in yeshiva, and when his mother came, he said, don't use the name Jason, they know me here as Yehoshua.
Several years back, when Yehoshua was simply Jason, we knew him not as an Israeli soldier, but rather as an affable one-year program student from Montreal. Jason was the consummate friend and good guy, equally adept at grinding through a tractate of the Talmud as he was at gliding through the lane in a heated basketball game. In many ways, Jason was just like the rest of us. In many ways, he was better. Declining many prosperous opportunities in North America, Jason made Aliyah and decided first to study in an intensive yeshiva program and then to join the elite Golani Brigade of the Israeli Army.
Yehoshua was one of these righteous soldiers we rarely see today. He was a growing scholar in Torah, an incredible person, and a friend. He left everything he had in Montreal to fulfill the mitzvah of living in Eretz Yisrael. He had many justified reasons to be betor from the army, but Yehoshua wasn't that kind of Jew to let a mitzvah go by. He joined the elite infantry combat unit, and all through the rigorous training, he maintained a high level of midot, his qualities, especially in the area of ben adam l'chavero, interpersonal relationships with his fellow soldiers. Every time he put on his uniform, he understood the risks and seriousness of this mitzvah, which resulted in Yeshua's giving himself to Am Yisrael. He was a kiteitzei le'melchama, the one who went forth to war, which is really a bar mitzvah, a true soldier. But besides a soldier, Yeshua was my friend, a very close one.
Taking a piece of the heaven and bringing it downward, and elevating each of us through his actions, by his smile, by his learning, his teaching, which he did incessantly, whether he taught Torah or basketball at Herzliya or in the halls of our synagogue. He taught it with love and devotion and dedication, and he elevated each and every one of us to levels we never thought we could reach.
Rabbeinu Yonah understands the second part of this verse differently. If we wish to gauge the essence of a person, we should ask, what does he praise? What does he value? For what is he ready to give up his time? For what endeavor is he prepared to dedicate his energies? For what cause, for what ideal is he prepared even to give up his life? Anyone who had the privilege of knowing Yehoshua knows very well what he praised, what he valued. The learning of Torah for the purpose of transmitting and sharing and teaching Torah, his love of Eretz Yisrael, his allegiance to the state of Israel, his countless acts of chesed, his life exemplified the pillars of the love of Torah Yisrael, Am Yisrael, the love of Eretz Yisrael. Ish lefi mahalalo, the essence of a person is what he praises.
The whole Jewish people were thinking about this young soldier who was murdered and missing. Well, we actually knew he was missing before we knew he was murdered. Headline news at the time, that's what was going on. He was one of a number, over the number of months, that were kidnapped, murdered. One of the final ones that got a lot of headlines also was Nachshon Waxman, who ended up being kidnapped and being used as ransom. Yehoshua was one of the first ones, and he must have put up a struggle because they ended up murdering him. Ari was one of the soldiers who was out searching for Yehoshua's body. And not only was he one of the soldiers searching for his body, it was him and his friends, Ari, who found Yehoshua's body, his own friend from his own unit. Besides having a huge impact on Ari personally, he made it a core mission of his life to keep Yehoshua's memory alive. And one of the things he made sure to do was every day, every year, on National Memorial Day in Israel, he would go visit Yehoshua's grave with friends and army buddies, and they would always, always, always be doing things to keep Yehoshua's memory alive. And now, Gedalia, we're about to see this unbelievable clip.
It's this happenstance. I mean, 2 weeks before he was murdered, it just happened to be that the news covered a story and interviewed Yehoshua, and here's the clip.
כחודשיים במהלך צילומי כתבה על הכנה לגיוס פגש כתבנו עוזי בלומר קבוצת חיילים מגולני ושוחח איתם. אחד מהם הוא יהושע פרידברג, זיכרונו לברכה, החייל שנרצח ביריות וגופתו נמצאה בסוף השבוע סמוך לירושלים. הנה הדברים לזכרו.
אתה זורק אותם? אוקיי, בסדר, אני לא הייתי בחוץ לארץ, אז כל הנושא הזה של צבא וכולי זה כאילו חדש. אז כשהגעתי לארץ, מה שעשיתי, פחות או יותר, אני ידעתי שהייתי צריך לגייס באיזשהו שלב. אז שמעתי על איזושהי תוכנית שכאילו נותן לך טירונות שבועיים, ואחר כך אתה עושה שמירות וכולי. אז מה שעשיתי, עשיתי את התוכנית הזאת. זה היה שבועיים אינטנסיבי כזה רצוף של כאילו טירונות קרבי. וממש אני הרגשתי שעכשיו, אחרי שעברתי את כל הטירונות הזה, אני מרגיש, אני חושב שזה ממש מתאים, או כאילו דוגמה טובה, מה שקורה פה בצבא בקרבי לפחות. אז אולי זה רעיון טוב גם לאנשים אחרים שרוצים לראות בדיוק מה זה, כאילו לעשות תוכנית כזו. כן, זה היה, קוראים לזה שומר ישראל, או בישראל שלהם בירושלים. זה גם, רוב האנשים שעושים את זה, זה מחוצניקים, אבל היו ישראלים גם, כן.
All right, so, I mean, just looking at Yehoshua, he was like a gibor. He was, I mean, look at him. I mean, that's somebody that you wanted not only to know, but you wanted him to be on your side. I mean, that's somebody, you could tell Ari connected with him because, you know, Ari was this kind of the same way, where, you know, they were tough guys.
Yeah.
You know, with a soft heart.
And they had such a deep love and understanding of what it meant to be a Jew today, and that the place to be was here in Israel.
Well, I think that's what probably made them the greatest soldiers. I mean, you know, Ari was a fighter, Yehoshua was a fighter. And in order to be a good fighter, you have to be, you know, you have to know what you're fighting for. You know, and they knew what they're fighting for. Ari made it clear what he was fighting for. He was fighting that he wouldn't be just like his grandmother who had to walk out of the concentration camps. And so that's what he was fighting for. He made it a point to say that.
Right.
And so coming up next for everybody, I mean, this is, you know, going full circle. We went to the past, we go right now to the present. And this is a video of Yeshua's father, Herb, who is, you know, and I've spoken to him, and I had, the merit of connecting with him a little bit. And I'll tell you, the bravery he has, not just to be resilient from everything he went through, but the fact that he would go and speak to groups and help heal people. I mean, that takes a special person when, at that point, you just want to kind of like call time out, and that's it.
All right.
So everybody introduce Herb Freidberg.
Hi, my name is Fuld Family. I'm Yehoshua Jason Freidberg's father, who was killed 27 years ago in March, it'll be, by a terrorist. And I'd like to tell you a bit about him. He was a very active kid until he was, what, 8 or 9. I would say he was wild, actually, but not in a bad way, just very active in sports and stuff like that. As he got older, 8, 9, 10, he became more observant and, and very calm, and became very quiet. He was not as rambunctious as he used to be. He started going to shul a lot and had observant friends, and started talking about Israel and thinking about Israel. He always did. And in Herzliya, he was like, he got the award for the best all-around athlete with academic prowess. And he went to Herzliya with a trip to Israel for 9 weeks, and then he went to Hebrew University for a year. So when he left for Israel a couple of years later, after he got his degree, which he promised he would, it wasn't that big a deal because he was always there. And when he made Aliyah, it was like sort of a natural thing. He always cared about Israel. Our family was big Zionists, and we talked about it, and I guess it sunk into him. We never heard much about the army. He didn't talk about it. We didn't know if he's going to join or not, but he did. Where his rabbis, his friends said, "What are you doing? It? You're 24. You have your whole life ahead of you. What are you doing?" He said, "No, I have to. I have to. It's part of my responsibility." That's the way he felt. I have uncles who came to Israel in 1925 and cleared the swamps, and so we have a background of people that were in Israel a long time ago. So he took that to heart, and he joined. Of course, we don't know that things like this happen because we're Canadians and we don't live with that every day. So when we heard he was missing, it was just a shock. When we found out that he passed away, it was basically it was like they cut 1/5 of my body out, which is I have 3 kids. My wife, we're 5, so it felt awful. In fact, both my wife and I, Dina Alav Shalom, we said if we were dead, we'd be happier because the pain was so intense and deep that we just couldn't stand it. But we did because we had kids, and we carried on, and then we'd be in Israel every year, and people would tell us stories about Jason, for example, Yehoshua then, that when kids needed money, he would lend them money, and while they weren't looking, he'd mark their name down in a book and he'd cross it out. So when they came to pay it back, he'd say, "No, it's paid back." And they'd argue with him, but this is what his friend told us. So Jason got $9,000 scholarship, and I sent him money. So basically, he was giving charity in my name, which was very nice, But that's the way he was. Very quiet, always helpful. He walked the walk. He didn't talk very much, but he did a lot. And when you speak to people in his troop, you always know that. He was a magus, so he carried a gun, 100 pounds or so, and they had to go on long walks, and he was the one doing it. And then, 8 years after he died, I say, some fellow shows up, tells me his name is Ari, and he has 50 girls from North America learning in his yeshiva. They aren't that observant yet, but they're going to be. And he asked me to speak about Yehoshua, so I did, and every year he came with girls or boys, and we became very close friends. He stayed in my house in Montreal twice, had Shabbos supper with our Rabbi Zeitz, and he stayed with me in Florida. And I remember one thing amongst a lot, that we went to fundraise at some synagogue, and 4 or 5 people showed up. And I said, Ari, I'm not speaking. I'm not going to cry for 6 people. He said, Herb, you're wrong. If we convince one person about our point of view, that's all we need. And sure enough, there was one person who got convinced and came to Israel. Ari toured with him, and he had a big fundraising thing with him in Florida, I think, after that. So he was right. And the thing is, when Ari became my friend, he became my son also. So I had like 4 children. And the funny thing is that our actual relationship was very close, because he was like a son to me, but we were like friends. So we spoke very openly, probably more openly than I speak with my kids, because we'd have arguments and I'd yell, I'd say things I shouldn't have said, but Ari ignored them, just like all my other kids did. So I knew for sure he could be my kid. So it was very funny. And the thing is, it's good and it's bad. I see Yehoshua and Ari's picture in front of me every day. Every day. I can't. When my son died, I was frozen. I think it was a bit easier. When Ari died, I wasn't frozen. And when they came to my apartment to tell me, one of his friends, Lawrence Witt, it was devastating. And it was before Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and for a week I was hyperventilating. I couldn't breathe. I just couldn't believe. And still now, when I go see Miriam and I see the kids, it's like, it's hard, very hard. Maybe I'm overdoing it, but and I know that right now Ari and Yehoshua are in Shemayim and they're studying and they're having fun, but we're not, and we're doing the best we can. They were 2 amazing guys, 2 very different guys. Ari was like me, outgoing, gregarious, whereas Jason Yehoshua was quiet, strong, and fantastic athlete. I don't know if Ari was an athlete, but Jason was an amazing basketball player. At some speech I made, I said, my wife taught Jason how to love and how to be in the world, and I taught him how to play basketball. He was an amazing kid. They both were amazing people, and to think that they would turn out to be heroes of Israel, that's just amazing. Am Yisrael Chai.
That is such an unbelievable way to, one, further get to know Yehoshua, and also we get to know Herb. And you know what's something special both about Herb and Ari is that while people might know about or have followed Ari and know that it was thanks to him that Yehoshua's memory was kept alive, like he took that on as a mission of his in life, but Ari did much more than that. Ari reached out, as you heard, to Herb and to Yeshua's family. And I remember in my community, right, I sit right behind Ari and his family in synagogue, and every once in a while Herb would come to Israel, and whenever he came to Israel, he always came to Efrat for Shabbat, to the Fuld family for Shabbat, to Ari and Miriam and the kids, always. And that's just like, what powers does this person have, not only keeping the memory of his friend alive, but reaching out and making that person's family part of his family. Like Herb became part of the Fuld family, the Fulds became part of Herb's family, and it was just so beautiful. And I know we're getting comments, people are writing comments online on the arifuldream.com website, and we have one comment that says it all, Gedalia. Irma Freidberg, thank you so much for writing your comment. She goes, wow, I never knew the story about Yehoshua. And that's exactly why we're doing today, to show all of you stories and insights about Yehoshua and Ari that no matter how much you think you know, you've only touched the tip of the iceberg, and there's just so much more. And hopefully today, people will be inspired by learning even that much more to be able to move on and keep both of their memories alive.